Hey, what's going on, guys? Mush back at it with another video, and I've been hearing a lot of your guys' opinions on Nvidia's new GPUs, the RTX line of GPUs, the 2080 Ti, 2080, 2070, and I'm sure there are more GPUs to come down the line, and it seems like so many of you guys are displeased with this. Honestly, my displeasure towards these GPUs seems to be way less than the majority of PC gamers. It seems like a lot of PC gamers just are spitting complete vitriol towards Nvidia. My standpoint is, yes, I'm a little bit underwhelmed, but I haven't seen anything positive come out of the GPU market, anything so positive, that is. We have seen prices go down recently, and that's great, but ever since everything went down with crypto, AMD hasn't even been in the game so much. So I wasn't going into this RTX reveal with extremely high expectations, and even I was a little bit underwhelmed. So I could see for those of you that did have higher expectations why you guys were so underwhelmed. In this video, I want to analyze all of the different issues gamers have with this reveal, the pricing, what this means for other GPUs, of course, ray tracing, because at this point, Nvidia was hyping that up as this big thing for the RTX GPUs, but it has really just devolved into a meme. And that's pretty incredible, because think about this, Nvidia was hyping up ray tracing for so long, they've been working on it for so long, it is the selling point to this GPU, at least that's what they promoted it as, and at this point, ray tracing has literally devolved into a meme. That's kind of embarrassing, but we'll talk all about that, and I want to get things started off with the pricing. Now, obviously, these GPUs are extremely expensive. Let's go over the Founders Edition pricing. The 2080 Ti is $1199, the 2080 is $799, and the 2070 is $599. So what's being brought up a lot is that the 2080 Ti is taking the place of a Titan, and that's fine for that price point. If it's just a change of the naming scheme, whatever, it's just gonna make it confusing to people. So I don't know why you want to change that naming scheme if you just want the 2080 Ti to fill that void. I think that's more often than not just gonna confuse people, but fine, whatever, let's have it at that. The 2080 is $799 and the 2070 is $599. So I would imagine that the 2060 would be released at $399, maybe a little bit more expensive than that. Maybe we'll see it at $449 or even $499. Now, these are extremely expensive GPUs, and what you'll notice is that the mid-range GPU line, that's completely eliminated until we see a 2050, because even a 2060, if this pricing scheme continues, a 2060 is no longer a mid-range GPU, it is a high-end GPU, and that's kind of crazy. A 1060 was always seen as that middle-end GPU, but now you would imagine that the 2060 is going to be released at the price point that the 1070 was released at, maybe even a little bit more expensive than that. Now, if you're telling me that these GPUs are just bumping up a notch, essentially that the 2070 is like the 80 series this time, the 80 series is like the 80 Ti, and then the 80 Ti is the Titan, then I guess that makes up for it to an extent, but these are still extremely expensive GPUs. We still don't have an idea of when the 2060 will be released. Rumors do say around October, and it is said to be around the performance of a GTX 1080, maybe a little bit better than that, but I think what people are getting twisted is they still think 1080s are like $500. That is not the case anymore. A 1080 is often available for $400, and we're talking about a new 1080. Yesterday, I looked at a refurbished 1080, and that was $350 or $360. If you look at actual pricing, that's really not that impressive for the 2060 to perform like a 1080, because the 1080 would be cheaper than the 2060. If the 2060 is released around $400, $450, and that's what I expected, and by the time the 2060 releases, I imagine the 1080's price is just gonna go lower and lower, then what is so impressive about the 2060 maybe performing better than the 1080? That's not that great. And then another thing that is kind of disappointing is that the 2080, it's being promoted as being twice as fast as the 1080. You'll notice that in a lot of games, it's not even twice as fast. Really, a game needs to support deep learning super sampling for you to see massive gains, and even then, guys, a 2080 is being released at $800. That's over double the cost of some 1080s. I've seen new 1080s as low as $360 before during those eBay specials, and a 2080 being 1.5 or 2 times faster than a 1080, and that's best case scenario, that isn't all too impressive. Yes, it's a generational advancement, but before we were talking about how the 2080 was taking that Ti spot because the 2080 Ti is taking the Titan spot, well then why is Nvidia showing promotional material that directly compares the 2080 to the 1080? Wouldn't that essentially be comparing the 1080 Ti to the 980? You guys see where I'm going with this? There's a lot of tricky information being put out, and you have to really look at pricing. The naming scheme has been all messed up. If you go with the fact that the 2080 Ti is taking the spot of the Titan, the 2080 is taking the spot of the OG Ti, and the regular 70 is taking the place of the 80, well, that is already already confusing in its own right, well, it only makes it even more confusing when Nvidia puts out promotional material. This is a graph that they put out. The 2080 is 2 times faster than the 1080. Well, you can't do comparisons like that unless you are intentionally trying to be misleading, and that's all I can get from this, because the 1080 is so much cheaper than the 2080 that, yes, it's great that it's performing 2 times faster in some games, but is it even that impressive? Given the differences in the pricing, I'm more interested to see how the 2070 compares to the 1080, and even then, the 2070 is going to be released at like $600. The 1080 would still be $200 cheaper, but at least it's more of an apt comparison. Even the 1080 Ti at this point is around $500, so you're not paying those insane pricing. You can look at pricing from when these GPUs launched or pricing from 6 months ago. It doesn't work that way. Just understand, when you look at Nvidia's promotional material, it's promotional for a reason. They're trying to sell you on something. It can be a little bit misleading, and with this RTX 2080 graph, I do find it a little misleading in that sense. And as I mentioned earlier, the 10 series at this point is absolutely not obsolete. With these new GPUs coming out, these GPUs all fill a higher end need. For the majority of people watching my videos, you guys are budget gamers. You are looking for graphics cards around $200 to $300, and none of these RTX GPUs are gonna fall even close to that. Even the 2060, again, I imagine that to be at least $400. More likely than not, it'll be $450, and that is insane. I believe the 1060 was released around $300, and that acted as that mid GPU for you to get. That is not gonna be the case anymore. We don't even have any idea of a 2050. Right now, your mid-range GPU is probably gonna be to pick up a GTX 1070, because that option just does not exist. So you have to understand that as well. Hopefully the 1070's price drops a little bit more. If we could get a 1070 for the high 200s, that would be great as a mid-end option. But if you're building like a $600 or $700 or $800 PC, chances are any of these new GPUs are just not going to be a good fit for you, because you're looking for a lower end option, and that option just doesn't exist in this lineup. Okay, so that's the issue of the pricing. The absence of a mid-range option isn't really a big deal, because Nvidia has always released their higher end product and then went lower end, lower end, lower end. So hopefully at some point we do see a 2050, and that'll fill the void, no problem. The primary issue with these new graphics cards, I think, has been an issue of promotion. The promotion has revolved all around ray tracing, and that's fine. Nvidia is introducing this new technology, but you do not have to promote these new GPUs revolving entirely around ray tracing. And I know that thing about Shadow of the Tomb Raider running at 30 FPS at 1080p came out, and that just had people losing their minds. That game running at 1080p and at 30 FPS is fine because it's using new technology, and it's still a work in progress. But here's the issue. Nvidia promoted their entire conference around ray tracing, so you would expect that ray tracing performance would be good. It is not, but maybe that was their idea, to revolve it around ray tracing, because they could say, hey, it's new technology, so you'll have to pay a little bit more for it. But I think that completely backfired on them if that was their idea. I think it would have been a lot better if you go in, you talk about ray tracing for a little bit of your conference, and then the rest of it should be talking direct performance numbers, direct 4K performance numbers. That's what we need to know about. That's what it should have been promoted around, because guess what? Hardly anyone is honestly going to take advantage of ray tracing. It seems like no one even cares, and I know hindsight is 20/20, and it's easy for me to say that, but I think going in, it was very easy to see that. And then that 30 FPS thing about Shadow of the Tomb Raider coming out, that just exploded everything. But understand the fact, if you're buying a $1,000 GPU or a $1,200 GPU, you're not sticking to 1080p gaming, even if it is ray tracing. I'm sorry. For the majority of my viewers, you're going to be better off getting a 10 series GPU for now. You're going to be better off getting an RX 580 or a 570. Those GPUs at a cheaper option are still great options, but for those of you, the small minority that do want a higher end option, the 2080 looks to be a very beefy GPU, and understand the fact that the promotion of this GPU has just been very bad, because again, we're just working off on that graph that Nvidia showed us, and you never know, Nvidia might play around with those numbers. They might be picking selective games with selective settings. You really don't have all the information that you need, so we still have to wait and see. That's gonna conclude this video. I hope I was able to give you guys a lot of information and my input on why I think these RTX GPUs have just been a promotional disaster. I think there's definitely time to recover. I don't think these GPUs are gonna die off or anything like that, and I think they will turn out to be quality products. Just understand that these products are marketed towards certain people. I think for a lot of people, until a 2050 does come out, for those of you that are on a budget, you are going to stick with the 10 series, or you are getting a RX 580 or something like that. And for now, they should be seen as GPUs for enthusiasts, even though I still do think the performance is a little bit underwhelming, but it's only information we have so far. By the time of release, we will have more clear numbers, and hopefully I will be more pleased then. That's gonna conclude this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you have a request for a future video, you can always leave that in the comments section down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. This video is sponsored by scdkeys.com. They've got great deals on all kinds of games as well as PC software. Specifically, they've got Windows 10 Pro OEM for just $14. So if you go on their site, type in Windows 10, you'll find it available right now. You can buy it, and you can take advantage of the promo code CM1 to save an additional 10%, so you'll be getting it a little bit cheaper. You can decide on your method of payment, check out, and bam, there you go. Now you've got Windows 10 a little bit cheaper. You can also use the code CM2 on games to save 3%, so take advantage of that as well.